no, that's also, but that's good to know, right? Like, it's such a cute little dish.
Meeting is being live streamed. Okay, so that's
Okay, I
it.
think they say that.
We're on. Very interesting. Registering the Zoom people now, we'll talk in about a moment or two.
So if you do got it, that way this will come up.
It's not that you don't make a judgment either way. So it's like,
Oh.
okay.
You haven't registered, you haven't registered?
He is registered. I'm not sure if he's in there yet. People are kind of coming in through the
Okay.
Zoom part. So I'm just gonna give the rights a little, I think. That should go right inside.
Can I speak up on the lights over here?
Well, let me just show you. She done?
Well, a little bit more, but I want people to see that. But.
Can everybody see it with the lights on?
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to be able to see it with the lights
We'll
on.
be fine, we'll be fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna wing it more than right, than more than read.
All right, so, a pleasure to welcome Myron tonight for this presentation. He's been really itching to do. He's very excited about this, so I hope you're as excited as he is. If you're not now, you probably will be by the end. He's going to share a lot of information. There's some people online that are participating virtually that will also participate, that he'll tell you about. So, we're going to try to intersperse comments and questions from the people that are participating virtually as well. So, we're just going to do our best to let everybody have something to say, share it. Right, Myron?
Excuse me.
If writing is okay for folks?
Yeah,
Okay.
excuse me, those of us on Zoom, there's a lot of shuffling papers, there's a lot of noise. Hello,
Yes, that's true. I agree. You can't hear a thing.
can't hear a thing. You can't be moving things around and banging like that. Thank you. But you can talk. Does anybody hear anything?
Nope, I don't hear a thing now.
Do you believe this?
I can hear you talking.
Hi, Abby, it's Lynn.
The presenter needs to be unmuted. That's the problem. He's still muted.
We're not talking. Can you hear us now?
Yes.
I'm muted unintentionally.
I can hear this lady talking about being muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. We'll get to that.
Thank you for mentioning.
didn't know how to do that. That's what it was.
It's like 9 after. She is still doing.
Can I hear us? Hi, can you folks hear us? Wave if you can hear us. Okay, she's waving.
Oh, okay, so I'm unmuted.
You're on mute.
Okay, so,
All right,
so ready to start?
Yeah, some people there are unmuting themselves, and I thought we had a control that they couldn't, so we're trying to stay on top of it. We said it that way, but, I was just gonna extend out, so I apologize if there's a little bit of noise as well.
Good preference to what we do. So, hello, my name is Myron Gittell. I came out here to town in '64, and the Cimarron city fizzled out in '63. But I was always interested in it. You hear stories over the years, over the decades, people that went there and worked there, and what is Cimarron Road? Where did that come from? And people even till 20 years ago, there were still remnants of it around. So I say, let's get some stories before I mean, we know the buildings are gone, but before the people are gone that worked there and that lived, that went there and that had family and stories. So that's what I try to do with different aspects of history, because once the witnesses are gone, history becomes that much more difficult, if not impossible. So trying to do that, we did find some people. So I was doing a radio interview about this, they said, well, Myron's gonna give a talk. So I said, I talk, but I don't like to give a talk. I like to kind of get people involved, and they have, even on all different aspects of it, they can have comments, questions, points of view. I try to take them as we go, but maybe with other things perhaps we could say to the end. But, so first of all, I want to thank the Sullivan County Historical Society, who made their collections available. A lot of their newspaper collections of weekly newspapers throughout the county are invaluable for any kind of, well, most kinds of research here. So, and the museum is also a fantastic place. It's open every day but Monday for tours or different exhibits and research. So we're going to talk about Cimarron City. Now, Cimarron, I get different views. How did they name it Cimarron City? Some say there's a place in New Mexico, Cimarron, New Mexico, and it was named after that. Other times they say Cimarron in Spanish, from the Spanish word meaning wild, untamed, unbroken. Certainly lived up to its name. And then in doing trying to get research on Cimarron City, Monticello, I came up at some point, there was a Cimarron City TV program. I don't know how long it lasted, but it was, so, there's a lot of origin stories, but I think what the proprietors of Cimarron City said it came from New Mexico, Cimarron, New Mexico. So, and where is it? Some people here today said, where? They went there as a kid, they don't know where it is. Well, that's the easy thing. So if you go down, there's a Cimarron Road in Monticello, on the east end of Monticello. And then that goes down to where the auto dealers are, the Ford dealer. And Cimarron City, if you go down Broadway going east to, where you have that turnaround where you can go onto the 17 or you go to the Resorts World. If you're making that turn and you see a lake or a big pond, that was Lake Cimarron during the 3 years of its existence. And the village or the city was pretty much on the eastern end of that. If you look at it, it was pretty much, but so that's where it was. And now with the roads and the all different changes in infrastructure, it's hard to see, but there still is, and it wasn't much before, and it ain't much now, but it was pretty much swampy kind of land or Badlands, as they call it. So that's where it was. And no one says anything else, or I guess it was. Okay, no, but I remember going there and kind of fast, because as a kid growing up here, there was no western town. So the first western town I went to was just a fake western town that was mostly fallen down. But as time went on, I did find some real western towns. So I'm gonna try to advance the, here's a map. I told you where it is, and here's a map of it, on Route 17 or right off of Route 17, quick way, Cimarron City. And you have the logo that's gonna stay, and that's kind of the brand that they use. Here we have another map. This was like from a town of Thompson map. And it shows, one of the advertisers was Cimarron City, and it shows, let me see if I could. No. Oh, hold on, let me just. Okay, oh. This one, right? Yes. Is this?
Yep.
Okay, so you know what? It's easier to just show it here. Here, where the star is, that was Cimarron City. And it still is what is. And this was ads, and this was talking about an ad. Cimarron City took out an ad. They were very poor, forward thinking. And you can see some of the other businesses of the day that were around in the town of Thompson. Okay, so let me just see. Oh, Zoom, someone's doing a Zoom. Join a meeting, sign in. I'm getting that here.
That would be Sunday.
Okay. Moving forward. This is a brochure. One side of the brochure, very professionally done. It covers everything with the map and with the whole Western motif and the Western things. And it has some pictures on it, but we have some close-ups of some of those pictures so you can see a better view of, it was 18 buildings, with different levels of authenticity. But, they tried. And, they didn't say it was a museum, it was just a theme park Western town. That's the other side of the brochure. And, okay. Now, yeah, this is part of it. And that was, what you see there, that was the gateway, quite an impressive place for, there wasn't much in the county that impressive altogether in those days. So gateway to the Old West, the flag, and on somewhere else we saw, the big fellow over there, there's a model of it, and we see part of the structure that was helping to build it was like at least 7, 8 feet tall. So we'll see that later on. But that was the welcome, and that was the entranceway. Now, we have a fellow, Dan, here, who worked there. So I know this from studying it. Dan knows it from having worked there. So if I'm saying anything, if you ever want to interrupt, because why I do these things is to get witnesses. And I think here, is the only person that I know that identified themselves that he knew it and he worked there. So Dan, if you have any comments.
If you remember the movie Blazing Saddles? That was the town.
Bingo. Okay.
It was probably fashioned after Frontier Town, if you're like George.
Yeah, that lasted a long time.
Yeah. Most of the buildings that you see were just fascia. There's nothing behind it.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. It wasn't.
And excuse me, Myron, so you were just mentioning the scaffolding?
Yeah.
So in the lower corner of that, that's the scaffolding for the big cowboy.
Right. And it's hard to estimate how large it was, but it looked like 8 to 10 feet at least. And
Well, we'll see it against the building, so you can figure out the scale
Right.
based on.
Probably I would say, but getting back to just the time when it was, why it came out in this time in 1960. 1955, Disneyland was built in California. And that real, first of all, the economy was pretty good in the 50s. People had more leisure time. Automobiles were safer and more reliable. People wanted to travel. And roadside attractions throughout the country started being built mostly started by local entrepreneurs trying to not just make money, trying to boost the local economy and get their little town on the map. And also in the 50s, there were Westerns on TV, on the big screen, coonskin caps, Daniel Boone, was everywhere. Kids were always playing cops and robbers. And so, the West was a big part of the life throughout the country, even in the East, in the 50s. So that also kind of made it, conducive to have these Western towns. Okay, the design for Wild West Village here completed. It says they're going to start to build March 1st. So this was from the Republican Watchman from, I think it was February 22nd or about. And they had this, it was in the planning stage for 2 years. And by 4 businessmen from, what happened? From Fallsburg, from the Fallsburg area.
You got names?
What's that?
You got names of the business?
Yeah. Well, one was Adler, A. Adler, who's supposed to be on the Zoom here. Another was a Rosenberg, I think it could have been from the Olympic Hotel, that's some Rosenbergs I know. A Rappaport, I don't know any of the history, and there was a construction fella.
Kraft.
So Kraft.
Kraft. So they were the 4 listed in all the articles that I read. Now, speaking to other people, that there could have been other people involved, but those are the 4 listed founding partners. And Adler was, in the article, was called the managing partner.
Al Adler, probably the engineer from Woodbridge.
What's that?
Al Adler was an engineer from Woodbridge.
Yes, and he's on Zoom. I spoke to him this morning, and he's on Zoom. I hope if I say anything, I told him to interrupt me if I'm. So, and he's going to add some things when the time is.
Nice.
Right. And so we got a little snafu.
Yes, please.
I don't know if I did it, but
The slide camera.
I could still, okay, what happened?
Well, they're gonna help us reshare the screen.
Okay.
Myron, it's possible that the Rappaport was Leo Rappaport, Marvin's dad, who owned the Delano Hotel, which was.
I don't know. I meant to.
We suspect it was Ralph Rappaport. He was an accountant in Woodbridge.
Oh,
That makes
okay.
more sense.
And Kraft was the ones that built Bell Poultry with Kraft and Hayman. They were general contractors.
So,
Because when we lived on a farm and bad up the road, Kraft and Hayman built all the chicken coops. They did all the poultry. And you run the chicken business.
Yeah, Kraft was the construction partner.
Right.
And Adler was the engineer and, which was Rosenberg, I guess it's a Rosenberg from the Olympic. So, okay, we're just getting a little, I didn't touch it.
Anybody heard this?
No. I know it's on the home screen. Do we need to go back to the home screen? Oh, he's here. No, it's not sharing.
Should be sharing.
Yeah.
Well, this guy's got chips and something to eat.
I hope you brought enough for everyone.
I didn't go near it. So we'll, sorry about that, and I think I'm innocent of this part. Just, I don't know, well, there was New Haven, there was, well, no, I can't go forward with the,
No.
So I could talk about.
Do you want to talk about any of the pieces in the room, like the Cimarron City sign and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the only artifact we have, and this one, Adam gave this to a local fellow in Paulsburg, and I heard that this was available for a loan. And this was the original, one of the original signs. It's about 3 feet by 4 feet. And it looks quite weathered, but it was we don't have too many artifacts, if you will, from Cimarron, but we have that. And we have things, there were pennants, there were, they did a lot of advertising novelty things with Cimarron City, pennants, they had buttons, they had a lot of great brochures, very professionally done. And it kept the place going, but okay, but no, New Haven had one, yeah, in the, whatchamacallit, no, up northern New York, Lake George, they had some of these western towns that lasted for decades. And this going out of business in 3 years was not so unusual for this type of endeavor. New Haven, they had it in a place that it was the shore people, they were trying to get the shore people and also people on the way to Cape Cod. So, they had a different, because they thought they would do something with good population coming, that would be at least something to get it initially started. Below in the back.
In the Bronx, they had Freedom Land.
Oh,
That only lasted 4 years.
And that was some huge operation. Okay, so David?
I was 10 when it closed, so I was there a few times. If I remember right, the parking lot was right off of Joyland Road. And they had a small, relatively, whatever, it seems big when you're a kid, a pontoon type boat that they try to make look like a side wheeler or a rear wheeler or something like a river boat. Yeah, to bring you across to the entrance. So your experience started in the parking lot, actually.
Oh, so you were actually
going by boat? Those 2 little ponds, it was a little,
right.
The way you got over was by going on the boat that they provided from the parking lot to the gate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's what, the whole thing, when you're a little kid, it's a whole big deal, right, to take.
So it was like a dramatic entrance, you were going like, oh.
Yes.
To a western city.
Yes.
Oh, now they would have to have, everyone would have to have a life preserver, and they'd have to have training.
And the boat did sink once.
There was also a boat that had a fire. Not to tell, but in one of the articles it said about in 60, not 61, there was a fire on board, and the Monticello Fire Department had to come out and do a rescue of a paddle boat fire, in a swamp. And so I don't know. Yeah, I guess if this was Zoom, you want to get more people, you got a market of the whole country, but it does add a complication.
All right.
Hello.
I have two memories as a child going there, and one was I remember like a stagecoach, black stagecoach with the horses, and I do remember a man wrestling the alligator, getting him on his belly and rubbing somewhere along his neckline and like calming me down, kind of putting me to sleep. So I do remember that. I was maybe 5, 6 years old at the time. Those are the only two memories I have. So yeah, I wanted to share that.
That confirms, because I have articles that they had Seminole Indians wrestling the alligators. So you're confirming, you sure?
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
You're in the right place.
You were too little. Apparently.
I can fill in a little bit if you want.
Oh, okay.
I worked there in the summer of '61 after I got out of high school.
And your name and you're from?
Dan Scribner, I lived in Rock Hill, still live in Rock Hill. And a neighbor of mine was there working as a bookkeeper, and she said I might be able to get a summer job there. So I went up and talked to the manager, who was Bernie Weinstein, not Bernie of Bernie's Holiday, but a really nice guy from Woodbridge. Turned out to be a great boss. And originally I was just hired, I guess, as a general workman of whatever. But my first job, the parking lots were on Rose Valley Road. And actually there's a little, I think some fishermen, there's a little bit of parking lot left there, but most of it's overgrown. But it was a dirt parking lot. There were no markings of any kind. So my job was to park, make sure the cars parked properly. And for about the first hour, it went great. Just people came in, they put one next to the other, there were no stripes or anything. But if you had to leave for any reason, take a break or deal with some other problem, when you came back, there were just cars everywhere. This was the day of the 9-passenger station wagon where the back row faced backwards, which most of our summer visitors drove in those days. And if there wasn't somebody there all the time, it just ended up looking like a giant junkyard. I had never been to Cimarron City as a patron, but very soon I got promoted out of the parking lot, or maybe flunked out.
That was 61, right?
61, yeah.
So the second year of operation.
And I was general maintenance man. I'd come in probably at 7:30 in the morning, clean all the restrooms, empty the garbage cans into an old pickup truck that we had, sweep the boardwalks, whatever they told me to do, I did. And I wanted to make a good impression as a maintenance guy because I hated the parking lot. So one day, and as I say, I had never seen the actual event and what they did there. So as I stepped off the boardwalk in front of the bank, I noticed it was very spongy there and somebody could break their ankle probably. So I went and got a wheelbarrow and I got gravel and I dug it all out and I raked it out all smooth, and I was very proud of myself. Worked without direction. And that morning when Cowboy Bob got shot off the roof of the bank, during the bank robbery scene, he landed and he broke his shoulder. Packing him onto the stretcher. I don't understand this. I've been doing this 3 times a day forever, and nothing has ever happened.
When they don't have your gravel.
Yeah, I don't know whether I ever confessed.
Statute of limitations.
That was one of my memorable events. I didn't get fired. A couple other memorable ones was there was a shooting gallery, which had been built by Kraft Construction. It was probably the best constructed thing there because they were using 22 pump rifles. And it was built out of welded, it was just essentially just a big steel box, not quite the size of this room. And they had pump action 22 short gallery guns like you probably saw at any amusement park you went to. And one day I was sent there because the guns had all stopped working. That's because they had never been cleaned. And I, like every other kid in Rock Hill, I owned a 22, so I figured out how to clean it and get it working. So that was a pretty good gig. And one day we ran out of ammunition, so they sent somebody up to Al Cohen's Sports Shop on Broadway to buy a couple of what we call bricks, 522 shorts. What nobody knew was that the gallery ammunition that you use in a shooting gallery has what they call a frangible bullet. When it hits anything hard, it just turns into essentially dust. Well, we had bought regular 22 shorts, and the first couple of rounds ricocheted around the inside of which I was standing inside. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. We realized that there was something amiss here. Another thing, the ride that they had there was the antique auto ride. And they had, it was a fiberglass, probably half-size, third-size Model T. It held 2 people. It ran with a lawnmower engine. And they had an asphalt path that wound around with, in order to keep people on the path, there were split rail fences or something similar on both sides. But these were not vehicles that were made for a ride. They were like a rich kid's toy. So we had all of these things, and all of our summer visitors would come and pile into these, and the kids weren't supposed to drive. You were supposed to have, but naturally the kids did drive, and they ran into everything in sight. And all of the fiberglass fenders soon became fabric and just sort of trailed off to the side. And because there was no maintenance on any of these vehicles, some of them didn't run very well or go very fast, and the governors on the others broke, and they could go any speed you wanted, so they tended to run into the vehicle and run on them. They caught fire quite a bit. It was not a very approved operation. And I'll let you get back to your presentation here.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're back on. Thank you all for your forbearance.
Thank you very much.
So, where we were, the design was completed before March 1st, but the building was going to take place on March 1st, 1960, with a target date of May 28th for it to be completed. And it was completed. Okay, here's a picture of, this is, the fellow on the left is A. Adler, the engineer, and he's supervising Mayor DeHios, the mayor of Monticello.
He's the gentleman in the top right, that's Al Adler right there.
He's on the Zoom.
Oh, he is here.
Yeah, right there on the top right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oops, oh, down now.
Okay, so yes, right. So, okay. So, so Mr. Adler is the one on the left. I told him about the picture, and there's Mayor DeHios, and he's doing the first nail in the building, and that's why it's a unique photograph. And we have Mr. Adler here on Zoom. Thank you. And that was, one of the promotion and, give it a little legitimacy. And now here, the article showing.
I think he's waiting for him to talk.
Oh,
So we have to unmute him.
What name is he?
A. Adler, or his wife, his daughter is Kagan. But, yeah.
She's gonna, Mr. Adler, she's gonna unmute you.
It's trying to talk. I don't really.
Oh, there it is. Oh, okay.
Say hi.
Hi, I can't see the.
You have to talk louder.
Okay.
This is Al Adler, my dad. Oops, let's get rid of that.
Hold on.
Can you see him? Get the dog out. Can you see him, guys? Can you hear him?
I think the dog is louder than me.
Okay,
All right.
but I don't know if you can see him. Can somebody please? Yes, okay, Joe.
Joe, we see you. We're raising your volume.
Okay, we can't see ourselves, so let's see.
All right. The start of this project was Harriet and Bob Rosenberg of the Olympic Hotel in Fallsburg. And he'd come to me and he had an idea that he'd like to make a destination for campers and other people in the hotels to visit, similar to what they had up in the Adirondacks. All right. I'm going to just go through some of the people that I recall and the things that I recall in the place. I did primarily the construction, but let me just start at the beginning there. Harriet and Bob Rosenberg picked up almost all the antiques, like the antique bar. I can't believe it.
The glasses, all that, right?
they picked up the materials that we showed in the candy store where they sold all sorts of things. Everything that he could show is sort of an antique. The other person, there's 5 people altogether. The next was Ralph Rappaport, an accountant. Now, Ralph had a big job taking care of all the payrolls but into the buying of all the materials and everything else, it involves money, and he would be handling all of that. Bill Bernstein was an attorney related to Bob, and he was primarily going to float a fund issue on the stock market, which never came to fruition, unfortunately. The other person was someone who'd worked with me, Joe Kraft. Now, Joe Kraft was a plumbing contractor, and he'd worked with me, and in this particular, in Cimarron, he took care of the plumbing, the sewer system, and the well and water and things of that nature, including building a rather shallow pool for the alligator show. Now, I'm primarily an engineer, but this became a full-time project for me, and it's the 5 of us. Eventually, after about 3 years or so, 4 years, Bill Bernstein had dropped out, and Lou Scheinman, an attorney from Woodburn, and he was a judge, he bought into the project. Now, the construction of the project was all wood frame structure, and we had some scenic designers from New York who did circuses, sets on screens, on shows on the stage in New York, and they were scenic designers, and they provided us with a general picture similar to what you see on I don't see it here, but what all the buildings would look like, whether they were 2-story buildings, wood frame, horizontal siding, vertical siding, windows on the 2nd floor, adobe type building, things of that nature. Another gentleman that worked with us in the park was Bill Leland, and he was a cowboy. He handled the cowboys that came up from northern Florida and from Hollywood. They all appeared, almost all of them, in various Western movies. But they'd also, some of them would ride the circuit for rodeo, for bronco riding. That was one of the shows. And he helped us, for the design of the chute, as to how they come, how they operate. They sit on these horses for about 8 seconds. The picture in front of me, I don't know if everybody's got it. Yeah, that's the jail. That's
The one on the left.
on the left of the picture.
That's the jail right there.
Yeah,
And then what's the one right after?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It goes all the way down to the end building, which you really don't see, was a big general store. And in between them was a Mexican restaurant in that particular picture. All right, now, some of the other people that were there, Les Chris's mother, I think worked the front gate. She collected the money, tickets, and things of that nature. Thelma Fields operated in various positions in the managerial in the stores, some of the advertising. We had 2 other gentlemen, and I just can't remember their names, from Monticello that handled advertising and things of that nature. The Indians that we had he's from Chicago, Big Horse Iron Mountain. He came up with his family, and they would run a small concession with bow and arrows or whatever you can think of at the time. And we built a building for him down closer to one of the lakes. I remember this property had 2 lakes, and it consisted of about 50 acres. Just above it, where Joe Kraft had built the pool for them, or a pond, this was done for Jackie Willie, who was a Seminole Indian. He came up with the alligators And he would dive in the water with them and then bring one of them up and put them on their belly, on their back, and rub their bellies or something so they were quiet. It really, the water, remember, we didn't have filters on this pool, so initially it was very clear. But after that, it got very dark. You could hardly see him swimming with the alligators. About a year or two later, he hit the headlines. He was taking the show on to France, and one of the alligators grabbed his arm and required 50-odd stitches. These were, live alligators. Now, you mentioned the shooting. That building was built in the steel balls at the far end, the shooting end of it, not the real live bullets. Mangles and Coney Island provided the let's see, what
Things
they
that
call
they
it, well, the automatic things that we would build. We bought the parts from them, and it's you could have a bird sitting on a steel rail fence, and if you hit them, you knock it over. I think there were rabbits. We had them on a chain going continually. It was a moving target. The jail that you saw the picture of, the sheriff that we had was, and then remember, this was during summer seasons, was a locksman from Woodburn. He was a teacher in the Fallsburg school system. We had a jail and they locked people up. There was a print shop in there where we would print pictures, and your name went on the newspaper as sort of a wanted for whatever robbery or whatever we called for. And the press had been provided, or we pertained from the Sullivan County Democrat. The stagecoach we had built out in Ohio, and had to build a trail through the woods in the back of the property. There's woods. Build a trail where you could take the people up for a ride. And mentioning the rides, at the stables, when we opened, we had a burro train where you could have small kids sitting in the saddle, wrap them in, and take them through a back trail. The train that we had, I don't remember the gentleman that we bought the outfit from, but laid out a gradient of about 1% grade through the woods to come back to the bridge, to come back to the station. And part of the show was they were being held up. If you had all small kids, I think that train was capable of holding 100 people, but normally there were 30, 40 people on the train. To get the smoke out of it, they dripped kerosene on a hot manifold. It was right in one corner of the town. The shows, we had some show people, a husband and wife team, they put the shows on in the big casino building, which had a balcony where we had marionettes, not marionettes, but mannequins. I believe one of them we could make move. I don't recall, but there was a stage on it, and they put a full show on in that end of the building. One of the women in the big casino, and it was a Sadie Hardenberg from Hasbrook or Woodburn in that area. There were a lot of local people that we used on the property.
53 employees.
I'm sorry?
53 employees.
Well, 54 employees when we opened, so it was a rather large operation. The food concessions, we had concessioned out to the people that did the concession work at the Monticello Raceway, and they handled all the food and anything that they needed, but we provided the buildings and counters and things of that nature. There was an arcade building that had some sort of game arrangements in it. The boat, we bought the steel hull and the stern wheel on the rear. We built all the gingerbread and everything else was done here in Monticello. Teddy Philberg did the carving for us. I gave him sketches, and we erected it, put it all on, and made up the Cimarron rows. When we bought the property had originally been bought by Rupp and Sturgis at a tax sale, and it was swampy. They turned that swamp into a lake, into two lakes, actually. And they left a small island for us. On the island, I built out of railroad ties, it's sort of a cave, and Rosenberg somehow found a bear for us to put in it.
Wow.
Now, the railroad ties that we used were the rip from the O&W Railroad, from the Nevesink River, all the way through to the village of Woodridge and the village of Woodridge. I bought all the railroad ties. Now, a lot of them were rotted, but we had enough of them to use for the piers on the property. The drilling of the holes, for example, was done by, if I recall, Kendall. And some of the big poles for signs were done by Kendall, if I remember correctly. The shows, one of the shows, for example, would be to hold up the stagecoach on the main street, and the guard on the stagecoach would shoot one of the robbers, and they'd fall off a horse while it was running. The Wild West show, these were really wild horses. We bought them at an auction. Joe Kraft went up state somewhere with an auction and bought the horses that we used, and at the end of the season returned them. We also had riding horses, and those riding horses, though, were for these. We have, of course, horses for the stagecoach and for the cowboys to ride. We had moved an old schoolhouse up, but it wasn't open for the public. It was used by some of the staff to sleep in. That's a picture of the stagecoach and the horses on there right now.
Yeah.
Right. We could go to the car ride. It was on the hillside near the
Indians.
boat.
Yeah.
Near the boat. We bought the cars. I had Fallsburg Iron make up bumpers for me with a wheel on it. The seat was large enough for an adult, not an ultra adult, but a normal adult and a kid. Normally, just one kid or two kids would ride it. The sides of it, the rail, we put oak rails around to try to hold it in. It wasn't a commercial ride in a sense that, but we made it a commercial ride out of it. The only thing the cars were capable with, which we toned down, because after the place closed, I took one home, and my daughter Abby could ride that 15 miles an hour. It had a reverse and it had a braking system, and she'd appear in the parade. My other daughter would ride it, and I assume my son Howard, who's on it right now, would ride it at the house.
And we were, like, I was 4 when it opened, so we were very young when all this took place. Yeah.
Okay. It's pretty much the shows. The best day I recall that we had was on a Wednesday, and I think there were 2,500 guests. Now, the people that we catered to, primarily hotels, so there's always a day camp at the hotel. If they came in, a counselor that came in did not pay. In the camp, the regular sleepaway camps, when they came in, again, the counselor that brought them in did not pay. We arranged, after the first year or two, it started a bus schedule where we would pick people up at the bungalow colonies. After all, the bungalow colonies, they were up there for the summer, and the women didn't want to, would come up with the kids, but most of them would rather sit around the bungalow. So we arranged that one person from the colony would get a bunch of kids together, and all, we'd send the bus for them. So we had a schedule to pick up kids to bring them into the park.
The camps and the hotel.
Right. And part of the construction that was handled, I think Joe Kraft handled the well drilling, and the building that contained all the plumbing for the men and women, or children and boys and girls. I think I've run through a pretty big outline of it. There's other things that I've, of course, forgotten.
Well, may I ask, there was something flashing up here about fire or something, or what did I see about something, it was something negative and affecting Cimarron. It was a little, does anybody, can anyone hear? Hello?
I don't know what the question was.
Oh, I saw that. It was the
Yeah.
article about the major, if you go back a couple,
On
it
the
was a
boat?
major problem,
Major
boat. Here, oh, no, not that
Oh,
one.
oh, there was something, getting the boat from Texas to Monticello.
To
So
get,
there was a big,
I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Say that again, it's little micro.
there was a big problem getting the boat, how to really get the boat after they bought it. That's what in the article, to get it from where they bought it
Oh, how to get the boat into the water.
to Monticello. So it was quite a route, but they finally did it. We assume, because they had a boat, we're not really sure if the boat that started that trip made it.
They had trouble getting it in or out to move it, Jack.
No, bringing it up from
Remember.
its origin,
What? Say that again, please.
bringing it up from its origin in Texas to bring it here. But they did it, either that boat or they got an alternate, but the story was the problems that they were having, just the transportation of the boat to Monticello.
They were having trouble transporting the boat to Monticello to put it in the water.
Oh, I don't recall, because if you think about it, over the years, we moved a big building, a big school building onto the property. I don't recall who we bought the boat from. The boat was new. It
I thought
wasn't,
you put it together.
and we built all the gingerbread and everything else and the seating on the site. It wasn't intended as that, but we did we put outboard motors on it, 2 outboard motors. The main motor, I don't recall the horsepower. There was a little backup, about a horse and a half, Scott Atwater, just in case something happened to the motor out while they were out on the lake, to be able to bring the boat to the shore so that they could unload. The normal piece on the boat, maybe 30 odd people. I know one time we put 50 people in, which is absolutely too many. I mean, it never happened again, just one time, but that's how big the boat was. And you could see that in the picture that's shown. As they went around on a boat ride, they were talked about, I'd set up in the bushes, with the blankets and you could buy an Indian face and feathers and stuff. Some Indians were watching us, you'd have the kids looking see if they could find it. Sure enough, they would locate it. They'd locate the bear on the island. There were all sorts of things that we put in there so you make a story out of it as they're riding around. It wasn't just a ride. We always tried to convey excitement for the kids, because it was primarily the kids' ride, and to keep their attention on what was on shore, because after all, it was a small lake, and then you had a lot of shoreline as you traveled around. If there are any other questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, the park, when it was built, we brought in all the sand and the surface materials, that you walked on in the park. The park was tapered in the sense that at the end where the train and the general store opposite each other was the widest part of the park. As it went out toward the end of the stables and where the bucking horses and the Brahma bulls that we had for a while, wild Brahma bulls riding, it narrowed out, so it gives it an impression of a larger park. It was large enough. As I said, the other people that a lot of local people worked there. I can't remember all the people, the payrolls and handling of the people with Ralph Rappaport would take care of that. My job was to to build it physically, to determine there were no plans other than the fronts. The people, the designers that we had gave me fronts for what the buildings would look like. That's it. That was me to determine the materials that I could use based on the picture and the location for piers and structure and the casino building. I call it the big hotel. That was a 32-foot truss. And I don't recall if we bought them or built it on site. Okay, capable, because I know in the past I had built these 30-yard foot trusses. So, clear span in the buildings and the floor systems so that everything withstood, the number of years that we had it.
I just want to comment while he's talking. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but he's turning 95 in 2 months.
Wow.
Do you believe it? How he can remember and recall 32-foot truss, makes me want to cry.
Yeah, no, I think I got covered pretty much what was there. And you've got from the articles and the memory of the people that are there, more details of some of the things that
The
were there.
experiences.
I just spent every day with the carpenters and layouts and show them, decide on the actual size of the structures and the building. But it's a good thing that we had the scenic designer for the front. So we made them look different. He just showed me design. I said, okay, I can do that. Things of that nature.
Wow. Can I just jump in and say one thing? Nothing majorly important. Growing up in the 50s, everything was like cowboys and Western shows, and I was totally hooked. So when Cimarron City came around and I got to go visit, it was like, wow, that was the greatest thing. So you did contribute to a real service to a lot of people that were really hooked on that type of thing way back then. That was great.
He said you did a good service to everyone. Who just spoke, by the way? We can't speak.
Love Price.
Love? Okay.
Okay. From the audience here.
Let me tell you,
For Mr. Adler.
real fast, in the finances of the thing, I mean, I wasn't the accountant and all, but I do know this. After the first year, of course, we put more money in to build more rides. We didn't open with the car ride, and I don't remember if we had a second stagecoach and all. But I do know this, the last year we operated, and I think we operated for about 5 years, we cut our losses in a sense that anything that they always told you that when you do advertising, it's not just the immediate thing, they look at maybe next year they'll come. Well, so we took advantage of these theories and made a few dollars on it, but it was never enough money made or produced for a group, for a public corporation to operate on. I mean, it was good enough for a mom and pop. If somebody owned it and they wanted to operate it themselves, then they could produce a living from the property and the items on it. We just talked about the other day as to why they do well up in the Adirondacks, or I think they still do. The stay up in the Adirondacks is normally about 3 days, and they're always looking for things to do, whether to go on the lake or the various.
We just have activities in the.
Yeah, right. Here, the people that were there in the summer, they only came in once.
Yeah.
And the camps, after a while, I guess the councilors got tired of it, from the hotel, so they didn't come as quickly. And the same thing, the camps are there for the summer. So it dwindled down to a steady crowd, and it wasn't enough for big one. So that we would go on to other things, and we closed up the property.
Yeah, it was fabulous. Everybody loved it. So do you have questions for him?
Yeah,
Yeah, Daniel,
the bank robbery, the stagecoach robbery, the gunfight at the OK Corral, which people watched from the boardwalks on both sides of the street, were narrated by someone, and his wife Ruthie played the organ, but he was great. He had a poem that he read for the gunfight at the OK Corral, and he really put a lot of life into the thing. Do you have any recollection of who it may have been, or?
His wife, Ruth, she played what instrument or?
Ruthie played the organ and he would narrate what was going on.
And he would narrate what's going on. Do you remember them as a couple?
Yes, but I mentioned it before. I didn't remember their names. They would put on a show even in the hotel. In the hotel.
They were great.
Yeah, the big hotel building with 32-foot spans and the stage and all, and they would take care, but I just couldn't remember their names. As I said, there was a lot of local people that were there that we just don't remember the names.
okay, I just wanted to try to go through some more photos. So we have the ad for 1961, where in your promotion, you show that you're adding 7 dramatic plays during the year. And I'm trying to find it, I guess I couldn't find it.
Second year that you were open, we added all the stuff.
The second year, we added some of the stuff. They, by the way, you mentioned promotions. They would take the stagecoach down to New Jersey, and I don't recall which mall, but they would put on a little show on it. And we had a deal once with Wonder Bread, that if you bought the bread, you got tickets either for the kid, but it had to be accompanied by an adult or something of that nature. And I remember going through with some of the cowboys, because remember, some of these guys would ride the rodeo circuit, during the other parts of seasons before we got them. And they would go into stores and paint with watercolors the outside of the store, saying, coming soon, bucking horses or Western rides or things of that nature. So I think it was an Art Sugarman. That's in my mind. I think that was the name.
Art Sugarman was a local publicist for the racetrack, and he was a reporter for the Republican Watchmen. But he would have been one of those to give a play-by-play. It might have been him.
Yeah, can you do me a favor when you speak, just don't speak as close to the microphone because it's really muffled on our end. Sorry.
Yeah,
we don't understand a lot of what you're saying.
Well, something about the racetrack. I recall that we did do some sort of a presentation at the racetrack. I just don't recall it was there, but I just don't recall what it was. Any other questions that?
Could you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, wait, no, I was saying Art Sugarman might have been, he was a publicist at the racetrack, gave play-by-plays and wrote a column for the Republican Watchmen for many years. So.
Art Sugarman, yes, he's saying.
Yeah. He did some of the promotion work and things of that nature for us, that I didn't handle the promotions and things. I think, I don't recall the rest of the guy handled it. I primarily did the actual buildings and construction, getting the materials, and that was enough, because there was I think we started in March and we opened up in Decoration Day in May. And I don't have to tell you the kind of weather that you have in the spring. It's a little rough, and it was a big town. We were ready to open. How to get, for example, the front gates, you see those logs, how to get logs in and cut so I could build it, because the second story overhangs the first. as similar to a real fort. Right. So a lot of these things are improvised. You know, you'd say a picture, but there's a big difference between seeing a picture and actually building it.
Now, was there, you see, the person, the cowboy in the graphics, and something here, we have pictures of it being built in with a scaffold of like, looks like 8 or 9 feet tall. Were you involved in designing that model?
Are you talking about the top front page of the brochure?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Okay. That sign, Bill Leland came up with it. It's out in Vegas. Somehow, some sort of picture out in Vegas. And he had a picture of it. The picture then was taken to Spectre K in South Fallsburg, if I recall. And they painted up a sign. And Kendall drilled the holes for the poles that held the signs and that figure. That figure was quite big. I don't recall the height of it, but it was faced on for the highway. The back of the property, there were 2 lakes. One, of course, one year we had a fishing contest and we bought live fish from one of the nurseries, and the kids could catch all the fish they wanted. That property line became eventually, on the other side of it, Griff Motors. There was a stone wall there, and the auto place was on the other side of that wall. We straightened out. Rose Valley Road had a very bad curve, not just a curve right, a curve left and a curve right. I don't know, because it was an old trail when they originally built it. And we donated the land to the county. It had nothing to do with the entry to the camp. It just that our property went out there to the very, it was a southwest corner of our property that this all took place. So we gave them the rights to straighten the highway out so they can go straight through because it was a terrible road for people to ride. In the very front corner of the property, when Rupp and Sturgis had owned it, they told me that they try to take every property, make itself pay for the tax, so that eventually they could sell it, because they would buy things at the tax sale. So at the corner of Rose Valley Road and Old 17 was a gas station, maybe a mobile station. That piece of property was taken off the 50 acres or extra. And that's how they got a gas station on the corner. I don't know if it still exists, but it's where where that whole intersection is to go to the resorts.
The little loop thing.
Yeah, when they built they built a new bridge. They took that bridge out, moved it up so that you could get off coming from Liberty if you wanted to. This wasn't in the time of Cimarron. It was afterward. That so you could get off from 2 directions in that whole intersection. And if you want to get lost and don't know how to drive, just take them over to that intersection. They'll circle around sometime before they find their way.
So there was some chat thing going on that are maybe questions for him, but if somebody wants to say it out loud, it's easier than us reading it. And so did anybody want to say something?
You have more slides that you want to run through?
No, just one thing. This was one of the ads, and it showed, at the beginning when it first, Cimarron City, it shows the hours, 10 to 5, and it shows the price, which is 95 cents for adults and 55 cents for children. So that was like, it says a lot here, the hours and the price and open for business, basic size.
55 cents for a kid, 95 for an adult.
Oh, I think if they've been boosted up in price, it probably would have been still open, but it was too close to another dollar or so on the things would have made a big difference.
Well, now you'll have all the other campers. But, yep, great
There-
photos. That was the guy, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a good
Right.
picture. Maybe. Yeah, that's from the sign. Maybe it came down then, I don't know. But that sign is probably 10, 12 feet high or something, or better. It's maybe 12, maybe 16 feet. Yeah, what was the other picture? They had this.
This one?
Okay, you can see the barns on the right side of that picture, the barns, and way out to the left, not facing the street, perpendicular to the main street was the hotel. That building there may have been the arcade building. And the horse stables were all in the back for the horses and rides and things of that nature.
Let's see some more. The old
The old postcards and stuff.
But if you go back to that for a second.
Sure.
So that, I feel, supports what, no, this right here. So this supports what Mr. Adler was saying about how the camp counselors would take the kids. Because here's a kid writing home saying, dear mom and dad, I went to Cimarron City. So it must have been the counselor took him.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So, does anyone else have any more questions about?
I'm gonna read a few of the comments from the chat out loud. Leslie says Julie has a picture with her and Chief Iron Horse in 1960.
Wow.
I don't know.
We opened in 19.
Yeah.
People
We
were
didn't
asking
hear.
questions at certain times, so I'm not sure, maybe it's time, do you have any more formal slides? 'Cause
No.
I'll-
Yeah, there are more slides. This we're like halfway done.
Oh, okay. We want to know when something closed down, but I'm not sure what they wanted to know when it closed down because of the timing. I guess what year did Cimarron City open? What year did Cimarron City open?
60.
I missed that.
No, 1960 through 63.
It opened at 60.
Yes.
Open in 60, yeah.
Jay Burns is asking, why did it close down and how long was it open?
How long was it open?
I-
Why,
I-
when did it close down?
I-
Why did it close down?
I think about 5 years. As I said earlier, it just didn't warrant the expense of running and the efforts of all the principals in it for the money that was made. Matter of fact, at the beginning, we kept putting money in. The public issue on Wall Street, let's say, never came through. In other words, all the money that we put in was our money, it wasn't a stock funds that were raised for a stock issue or something. And then you can keep doing it. I mean, they're not on your head, but if it's your cash you put in, you're looking for and putting a lot of effort in, working there, not drawing salaries, or nobody ever drew a salary out of it. And they put a lot of work into it. It didn't warrant keeping it going.
Someone named Lynn comments and says, Al is the last surviving partner, so it's very special to hear his firsthand account. My father was Ralph Rappaport, who handled the financial aspects.
That's Ralph Rappaport's daughter.
Oh.
Lynn.
Okay,
She said you're the last living,
oh.
and she said she brought up that it was her father is Ralph Rappaport, who they were very, very close friends. My dad and Ralph. Right?
Yeah, that's the way Ralph got into this is Rosenberg approached me and I approached Rappaport and we discussed it. And then we said, all right, maybe we'll try. And then I talked to Joe Kraft, I had him as a partner. I had him as a partner in construction. We were building buildings like at that, I think we did a Brown Hotel. And he said whatever I felt, I'd go along with. I was doing all the estimating and the actual details of it. He would handle all the plumbing. By the way, all the painting was done by Carl Arthur of Monticello. Did a hell of a job because it had the scheme of a painting. I don't recall whether the designers of the set gave us some colors or Carl, who just passed away, I'd say probably about 2-3 months ago. He told me he came in, they sprayed everything. We ran in with a crew. Remember, this was a few months. And it was a big, from scratch. There were no detailed plans of anything. A lot of it is just as we went, for each building, you had to have a size and a beam and things. I would just do it physically. When I ordered the material, I said before the men would come into work, I knew already how I was going to build it and how big. So Carl Arthur did all the painting on it. Fantastic job. In a couple of days, he did the whole park. Came in with a big crew of men.
Someone named Nancy says Arthur Glicks was the dealership. I think you were trying to figure out the dealership.
Arthur Glicks was the dealership. There was
The car dealer? Oh, it was Glick, Arthur Glick.
Yeah.
That's next door.
And then you said, he also said, or they said, I don't know what you said. After you, what?
Thanks for the fish. Fish there as a kid after it closed for several years. It was in my backyard. That's Nancy.
Oh, so Nancy, it was in her backyard. She would go fishing after we closed.
Oh.
Nancy, what's your last name?
Let me see if I can find her and unmute her.
They were the neighbors to Cimarron.
Yeah, that lake that pretty well fished out that small pond. Nobody ever really, maybe other Nancy, nobody fished the big pond, but because the small pond we had stocked with fish. We had stocked, and we had a fishing contest. There were fish in the big lake, but we didn't stock it. You know, just roll over from the small pond, or people would sometimes catch fly fish and they would bring it over and dump it in the lake.
Right.
Myron, do you want to go ahead with the next slide?
Okay, yeah, let's see, we have 1 or 2 more. It's not.
Hard to hear. Hard to hear it.
You know, there's nothing.
Nothing made.
Yeah.
What's that?
Thank you. Oh, take care. Thank you.
I gotta do this.
They said they ice skated on the pond.
Thank you.
Just,
Wait, what did you want to say, Dad?
now, just as an aside comment, my son Howard was born in or about March, I guess.
March
Yeah,
7th.
he was born. And the guys at the place decided, and they bought a small pair of cowboy boots for him at the time when he was born in
1960 when it opened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right after. I mean, he was right before.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
So all of these slides are going to be online, right? So we can then take the time to read them.
I don't have to speak to the librarian, but
Okay.
who's asking the question?
Me, Abby. Abby. Bacon.
Okay, we'll have them. You have my email, and she wants to know if these slide things are gonna be available online through the library.
Well, they'll be on YouTube, so.
Okay, so there.
But if Myron wants to share them.
There's some articles that you can't read fully through technical difficulty. If you want to see the whole articles, you can email me and I'll get the whole articles to
Some
you.
people did ask about what papers and the dates of some articles, because they do want to follow up, so
Right.
maybe we'll do that.
Okay.
And the last name of Nancy was Hoyt.
Oh, Hoyt, they were the neighbors. Do you know who the Hoyts are?
Don't remember it now.
That's it.
Okay. So, are they talking? Oh, so, Mr. Adler, you mentioned before about some of the promotion. Here we have one of the promotions down in Playtogs in Middletown. So your people, the Cowboys and Indians, presented two shows in the evening on a Friday at Playtogs. So they were out there, and that was one of the busiest, certainly the busiest commercial venue in probably a 40-mile region. So they were out there doing what they can for promotion. Now, about the Indians, in one of the articles it said before they had decided on what tribe they were trying to get, they went around to try to not quite interview, but get a handle on how different groups would come. And here they got, it says they were from Comanches from Oklahoma, which is, so were you involved in that aspect?
The Indians that they choose,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, every year they would
Yeah,
sometimes.
same
choose-
Indians, same Indian. The funny thing was when you called him to discuss something in Chicago, you'd always make it person to person to Chief Iron Horse Big Mountain. And you always had trouble with the operators. They would think it was a
job.
college prank or something. But he was a real Indian. He was a show Indian, though. I mean, he was an Indian, but he went into the show business, you know, to do that.
Well, it was quite the place. and Glad everybody had an experience over there. I'm assuming
So I
everybody.
have a question about that Bozo picture. How did you hire Bozo? What was that about?
The Bozo picture. Where's the Bozo picture? Oh, go back. Right there, Bozo. There's a picture of Bozo. TV clown at Cimarron.
I don't recall.
You don't remember? Okay. Well, there's
Yes,
one thing he doesn't remember.
No, a lot of things. I don't know who handled the,
Oh,
you know, listen, everybody had a piece of something to do. And I just don't remember the Bozo.
Now, this ad was for 1961. You can't see and here it shows what they're adding. They have 7 free dramatic shows and pageants. The antique You Drive It car, that's what you mentioned before, and the Port Union rifle range and picnic area. So they added to try to broaden, and you know, you have the same people, you want them to come back, so you had added attractions for them.
Those were not there originally?
No, if they said they were going to add, then they weren't the original. I know the car ride absolutely wasn't. Hey, this was a few months of the worst time of the year to open, and Sugarman, if I recall, said you got to open for Decoration Day. That's the big day. We should have left it for July 1st. It would have been a better, because June was not a big day. But you found out all sorts of stuff. And also the shooting gallery wasn't on, let's say, a scenic designer or something. You know, we decided, well, it would be good, you know, once I went to Coney Island, to find out where I could buy the targets, you know, for a shooting gallery. Yeah, there were live rounds being, you know, it must have been shorts, 22 shorts though. But we dealt with Remington Arms. There were blanks, all the Cowboys had blanks. You start thinking about the problems in the papers recently. Is Baldwin, where he picked up the gun and the guy got shot. It wasn't supposed to be live bullets in the gun, and it was.
Oh.
Yeah, that's this. Oh, that was this picture of the sign.
Oh, the one right before that.
Yeah. That's the sign, we have that sign here. It was loaned to us by the fellow from Sutton Underground. He owns that. I think he said he got it from you.
Is this what you got? You gave something?
That's the sign Sutton has.
Yeah. And he has one
Yes,
of the cards.
he loaned it to the library.
Oh,
Well,
wow, you really dug up a lot of stuff.
yeah, you had the pictures, I see it, I can judge the, you built it so fast that you live with
No,
it.
no, I'm trying to find something in particular, the end of the road. Oh, they're about Bill Leland, who was a noted cowboy in the country.
Yeah, you mentioned
And
Bill Leland, didn't you
Yeah,
say
oh, yeah,
that?
Bill
He was
Leland.
the-
Bill Leland
Yeah.
took care of the Cowboys. He showed me how to do these shoots and all because, I don't care what experience you have, you don't know how to build the chutes so that they can come out. It's relatively simple, but you still got to know how to build it. And he helped us build it. I don't think he rode any of the bucking horses. He used to ride rodeo, so he was familiar with it, and he knew, he got a lot of the staff, the cowboys, he got them for us.
What's this field? That's not in the.
Okay, no, I think that's the end of the. Okay, well.
But I know that black field isn't on that article.
Oh, that. Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Rodeo Ace brings his experience. We'll get these later and you can read. Well,
Well, we wouldn't be able to read that anyway.
But if we advance to the end, then I don't want that to be on every
Yeah.
slide.
So many challenges tonight.
Can you move your cursor and click L outside of the box, black box?
Oh,
Yeah, just click anywhere else.
are we still on?
Oh,
Yeah.
there was just a little glitch.
Oh. A little glitch.
All right, so did we make it to the end? You want to just advance to the end?
Oh,
We want to go
Love
forward.
there was some things that had been.
You didn't have pictures, railroad.
Yeah, I'd like to see the pictures of the train.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going. So what do you want? No, I think, okay, I think that's it. Trip right in.
Yeah, that's right.
Either way, it's going.
It's something about play.
It lost the chronological order.
No, this is in the order. So if this one is a split screen showing
Woman, I see.
1970 and 1960 in the front of the same gun shop.
Oh, this is, say that, what year, 1960 and what?
So one side is 1970 and the other side is the original 1960 in front of that gun shop.
But you
Yeah,
weren't open.
it's not
like
open.
70.
Oh,
No,
no.
that's what I mean.
No,
It's
it's
just
not
that somebody
open.
must have just
Yeah,
posed there and
Yeah.
somebody made a postcard out of it.
Ah, cool.
Just
The train was earlier.
You made
Yeah,
it-
because this is the end.
Oh, you got all. We're trying to go back to the train, one of the,
I just heard you say like to the game.
here or on Zoom.
I heard voices in this room.
Yeah.
Thing.
Oh.
Yes.
He wants to.
That's
the
the
there's-
So there's the train.
And this is like a robber going to, rob the
Guy was
train.
gonna rob them. Yes.
I don't know that, other than for publicity purposes, I don't know that happened because it would be hard to have people watch it out in the woods.
What? No, they did, Rob. I don't know what he's talking about. But did they come on foot or on
Yeah.
a horse?
Well,
they-
depends on,
So they,
probably on foot.
yeah, they did it all the time.
Yeah, they waited nearby.
There's people in the train.
For the
Yeah.
train, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
there's people in it, so, yeah. Maybe he just jumped off his horse and I was
Yeah.
running it.
Wasn't something you would see in the main street.
It was just to entertain the people on the train.
No,
You answered all the questions.
Horse, whoops.
Were there any other pictures that you wanted a better look at?
Be on it.
That same lane, the Rappaport letter, Sullivan County historian John Conway has written a lot about Cimarron City.
Were all the rides and attractions covered in the 95-cent admission charge?
You paid extra.
yeah, they had ticket booths within the grounds.
So the rides and the food were listed as extra, everything else was included.
Right.
And that's,
So that was one of the slides, like it explained it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
same person, Lynn, said yesteryear has Cimarron t-shirts available.
I know, I saw it.
Said T-shirts available online.
That age, I think it's boring, so.
And Leslie said that picture is Julie Kirkle Burns with the chief in 1960.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
And, I read that story of the woman's picture. The man who took that picture was a photographer from New York City, and the picture is of his wife, a model from New York City. They were traveling around the state looking for interesting places to photograph.
So she's talking about a picture she has, not the picture that's in this.
So I thought she-
I thought
No, I think
it was the guns, the one in front of the guns.
97.
Oh, the 1970 picture, Leslie, probably.
Oh, okay.
That's cool. Yeah, she did look like a model.
Yeah.
Something about memory. Thank you, Alvin. This is from J. L. Burns. Thank you, Alvin, for all the interesting information and for a walk down memory lane. Are there any responses? I'll just unmute everybody.
That's about it. That's.
Carly, can you unmute everybody that's online and just, if they want to just
Chat.
chat in words? Just see if there's anybody.
Thank you, everybody. It was great.
Oh, so thank you for your understanding. And but now, everyone, thousands of people drive by this, so now people will know what was there before. And we don't think that it's such, doesn't think like there's gonna be, seem like gonna be anything going up there at such a deservedly unimproved land.
We'll wish Mr. Adler a very happy 95th.
Yeah,
birthday.
wow.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Up there we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Are we gonna get a copy of the chats, the questions and stuff?
Yeah, I'll speak to the librarian. She said, I'll find out how it's done.
Okay, because
But
we
even
don't
on
know
some
what
of the
people.
articles, and like the picture of Adler with the mayor, I'll have that, I'll make sure that's duplicated.
That's great.
We should also thank Dan. Dan, what's your name, right? So thank you also to Dan.
Oh, Dan.
Whatever things that you wanted to say this week.
Now it's, the end of
All right.
Yeah, you're the only witness that oh no, the other people said they weren't dealing with it.
I guess we're done. Okay. All right, thanks, guys.
Don't be.
Thank you all.
I just wanted the book.
Let me give you the money.
Yeah.
Wait.
You want me to find out, I want you to post it.
25.
Same place they got the training probably.
This is where it happened.
Of course, we use low web rails. As opposed to.
I had my book for fun.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My music.
You know the words in the area?
Yes.
Oh.
That's what I am.
You're in the area.
Yeah.
No, look it up.
I know. Thank you.
In New York City, who's.
Of course, they were running coal trains, works broke down for sure.
Okay.
Hey, if anyone wants any of that.
Well, not the, you know, the ones cut out is the rook over.
You know, it's not that many years ago that the sign finally was taken down. It's where the Robert Green sign is now. That's where that. There's a
The overhead came down to
now.
Kadosh.
That's where that big sign was. And it's not that many years ago.
Wow.
And there's a lot of discussion about if they can get financing to keep it from falling apart. And unfortunately, it's just.
You know, if you go outside of Liberty on 17.
The Kutcher sign is still.
Kutcher.
It's unbelievable. After all these years.
And I cried, I don't know,
Yeah.
you ever take reservations? Oh.
But some-
I can remember seeing trains cross over,
It's not gonna be new.
crossing over the underpass between Woodsboro
And I'll
and
find my glasses, I'll do better with
Cotton
that.
Mountain.
Good safety time.
Old 17.
Oh, they're wonderful musicians.
Oh.
They played here 4 months ago, or when did you do your match?
In June.
In June.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, fabulous.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rick has played with a lot of big guys, as a matter of fact.
We know, I showed them.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, music came in sections.
Oh, look, that thing is best. But how are you?
I'm good.
We would usually come out 17K and get on. All 17.
So.
So we may not be where Rock Kelly, we had family to walk.
Well, no, I haven't.
I wrote my thesis on building the
I'll try to do the panels, cardio first.
I have it sitting at home.
What are you?
John Conway made a
I'm not
copy.
sure, I'm in the eighth.
It's just, if you look in the bibliography, it's mountains by rail.
Right,
I have great cardiologists.
You look great.
No, thank you. I
You
appreciate
got
it.
good
Um,
color.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm just trying to think
So, okay.
I enjoyed that.
which sections of 17. When I was a kid in the late
Oh, I know, Mr.
50s.
You can.
We used to, I don't remember, we used to go over and play
Oh, that's.
on the construction.
No.
Where they were building 17.
Oh, yes.
The new road wasn't,
You know, I think I actually.
but it wasn't, it didn't all come at once.
No, I think I
Pieces.
One of their very jackets still. And so.
I was there. Remember that whole tape on the show, Al was there, Mike Taylor.
Okay.
And, who was it? One of the twins that had the beauty shop, what's her name? Edna? One daughter.
Oh, real, okay.
And the other one.
Oh, Manor, yeah, I went to college, you know, yeah.
So we had 5 people from Memphis.
When I came
Well,
back,
nice, I'm into the history.
Okay.
I'm trying to think when the
Because
section
I was, it was
from Parksville to Roscoe, over here.
then the ambulance court decided to have one paid member. I said, you do that. Because you can't have.
Well, it was Morriston actually is where the, you came up, coming south, whichever.
I think.
Came through the Manor and up Old 17, it was curved,
Yeah, but.
and then you got
You
on.
had some good ideas.
Yeah, I'm just saying, general,
You know what, Bob was dying, that's why I didn't take the point.
there are too many calls. You understand? It was years ago, my sister was on the call. Yeah, I was drunk. They take a car to hospital. He seemed to be finding.
Quite random, yeah.
Because one was the power. And he put in there. From that time
They don't
on,
do that anymore.
right, but from that time on, never took anybody.
Wow, that's.
So the ambulance was used as a taxi service. Every truck, every this, you know, and if the doctor needed to see a patient.
Red apple, red.
I'm sure you have many calls. When he got to somebody's house, they would dress with suitcase.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to pay for the gas.
Oh, so now you tell me the
Yeah,
was what?
Yeah, because of that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought you wasn't that a mortician.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very. I had a, no, so we said, what we were exposed to on the Monticello, of course, in the sixties and seventies, on High Street, and Evergreen Drive.
But you get Joe Garber is there.
Yeah.
My dad was named Abe and, you know, back.
If you get off at 114,
Whole group of guys would go, different
Highway.
houses to play cards. So
On the
my father's.
Old 17.
Was very superstitious.
you've got Route 17, you've got Old 17 in
Like
front of
cards,
and County Route 4
and
and
said to my
Turnpike.
father, that man is
Or all of the-
this house on business.
Yeah, but as
So
you can actually see segments of
superstition,
the
he couldn't have the undertaker. in their
Yeah,
house.
that'd be our place.
So they never played poker at my father's house again because of my grandfather. Because she was so superstitious.
Old.
Right.
George Slater died. But you didn't know her.
No, I don't know. And then my friend Debbie was a professional singer-songwriter.
Oh, Debbie.
And she was at a viewing in Woodburn. I guess it's too late, got hit by a car.
That's the positive.
No, she
Oh, you really talking about us again?
No, you don't see
But
the
that's
paper,
not-
so you don't have a paper.
The paper, I stopped it, you know, when I was a little kid, my first job.
Yeah, and you see this, it's like a metal TV.
Really?
Back then, I was so wicked, I bought my first bicycles.
Yeah,
It's in the circle, so I had to cancel it because, you know, and you know, that really gave us, and so was.
But way back when, they were made out of wood, and they used.
Yeah, that's right. So they could do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the Democrat twice a week.
My question is, that was over, whether for that works with you.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything, you're
Ever since they sold that.
Well, I used to deliver soda.
Yeah, but when it changed, I would say the last 3 years or so. Yeah.
And just like you coming up,
Yeah.